Our guest in the chair today is Andy Everitt, the college's Assistant Director of Training. Andy has embarked on a major project here exploring how effective collaborative working is on the ground during emergencies. Andy, let me ask you the question. How effective is collaborative working?
Well, different public sector organisations will tell you that it's very effective. Others will tell you that it isn't. The reality is that words such as collaborative working, partnership working, interoperability can have sort of a bit of a buzzword connotation and lose their meaning. What it means in real terms is actually people getting together, sharing best practices and ideas, learning from those and being more efficient and effective in the way that services are delivered. Now, that's very much an organisational or human thing, and there are lots of barriers to genuine collaborative working. Let's explore a couple of those things. When people talk in terms of emergency management within public sector organisations, be it Category 1 responders, police, fire, ambulances, local authority, and all the other organisations that support those people in times of crisis and emergency management, this is actually only one element of the day job. Many public sector organisations have different roles, and in fact, the day business is driven by a whole raft of legislative doctrine and guidance. So where do we sit within that, and where can we go in terms of integrated emergency management? Where do we go to understand more and identify where interoperability, collaborative working, actually works?
Well, can you give me an example of where interoperability is working successfully now?
Very often it's a painful process to get to where you want to be in terms of collaborative working. If we look at the area of safeguarding, which drives an awful lot of business within public sector organisations, that's the safeguarding of vulnerable adults and children in society. There's a lot of examples where it's gone horribly wrong. SOAM, Baby P, and there's more we see in the newspapers and social media daily. But that's in the strength of, but there's a lot of strength in that because that is how processes evolve and structures evolve through getting it wrong and getting it right.
So what you're saying is, in the field of safeguarding, acknowledging that there have been high-profile incidents like the death of Baby P, they have made significant strides in partnership working.
Absolutely. There's now the development of multi-agency safeguarding hubs across many organisations, many of the same organisations that are involved within emergency management, co-located, consensual decision-making, consensual leadership, emergency procedures for dealing with incidents quickly and swiftly, and constantly seek opportunities to evolve so that we don't face those scenarios again.
And many of the agencies involved in that work in safeguarding are also involved in emergency response. Absolutely. But what you seem to be saying is we haven't taken those lessons from safeguarding and absorbed them into emergency response.
I think if you look at the whole community protection umbrella, of which you could have safeguarding elements, there could be community safety issues around public order, quality of life issues, crime, all the way up to integrated emergency management and civil contingencies act. It's all under one big community protection umbrella. And what I'm saying is there are lessons learned of how we go about delivering on day jobs, in different areas that impact on those same organisations, that learning can be identified to bring into the area of integrated emergency management.
You seem to be suggesting that when we have a real emergency, a major flood, for instance, that the lessons we have learned in the day job seem to be forgotten. They aren't absorbed. We don't use that experience in our response to this major emergency.
I don't think they're forgotten. I don't think they're given the credibility and the standing and the recognition of actually what goes on and how it's achieved, not the what, the how it's achieved, how it's delivered. And giving examples of that is in terms of community safety partnerships, multi-agency, looking at quality of life issues in the community, looking at safe event management within the community, being in touch with the community, but working together, sharing information intelligence, because one single agency is not the font of all knowledge in relation to a particular community issue. And it's that shared understanding, challenging of perceptions that reaches the right decision, consensual decision, and action that comes out of that. So dealing with critical incidents, which is what many people do across these agencies on day-to-day, which may not be emergency incidents, critical incident being anything where harm to a person or threat to property or damage to the reputation of an organisation is at risk. So a lot of our work day-to-day that goes under the radar across public sector organisations would be deemed critical incidents, but the process of how that's delivered and interoperability, there is numerous lessons there that we can lift into the world of integrated emergency management when we're dealing with crisis and emergency scenarios.
I know that cynics suggest that partnership working is being driven primarily by the funding crisis in the public sector at the moment. Is that fair?
I think on the surface it would be. For those that work within community protection umbrella, collaborative working, partnership working is the singular way forward in terms of more effective services, more considered approach, a more consensual approach, being in touch with feedback from the community from all angles. So if we took a particular issue, we would want to know what's the police angle, what's the housing angle, social services angle, health angle, what's the fire angle. So you build that bigger picture. It's no different in terms of emergency management.
But what you seem to be saying is it may be cash driven or may have been cash driven in the past, but actually it produces better outcomes.
Absolutely. So it's not about working harder, it's about working smarter. So whilst in terms of real cash terms, public sector organisations have been through an unprecedented round of budget cuts, actually it's forcing better collaborative working because that's the only way that we can continue to deal with challenges in day business. But it goes much further than that. The traditional role of, let's say, the police service or the fire service, and in fact all services, is changing. The current issues that the challenges we're facing is around safeguarding vulnerable adults, vulnerable children, mental health in the community, immigration, migrant workers. You know, these are all different elements and new challenges that are coming to the public sector organisations, which 20 years ago weren't there. So as well as there being funding cuts, both public sector organisations or all the public sector organisations are having to think about, A, what they focus on in terms of delivery, but also how they go about delivering those areas. The examples I've just mentioned, actually traditionally, the police involved in, but they weren't traditionally a policing matter.
So how can the EPC help in improving the way that interoperability works on the ground?
Okay, well there's been quite a few studies in relation to interoperability and enablers and barriers. There's just been an HMIC report published on the tri-service interoperability arrangements relating to the Joint Emergency Services interoperability programme. Within that, it has been highlighted the need for greater working relationships between not just the Category 1 responders, police, fire and ambulance, but also wishing to draw in all our Category 2 responders as well, and also the local resilience forums. Now, the Emergency Planning Centre are in an ideal position, obviously, in advising, guiding, toolkits, and giving best practice in relation to emergency management legislation. But also, we're in an ideal position to enable to facilitate the development of better relationships between agencies and between individuals and agencies to understand and gain a full understanding of the how in terms of delivering emergency management, as well as the what in terms of the best practice and guidance. And what we're looking to do is to offer a course, a multi-agency course, where course members will be from many different organisations who are operational managers, who are leaders on the ground, who will be able to explore and understand the what, but also the how, in terms of how we can begin to develop more mature and better working relationships in periods of demand.
This doesn't sound as if it's one of the college's more academic courses or courses based pretty heavily on doctrine. This seems to be more about sharing good practice, sharing experience.
Yeah, and that's what it's about. The best learning is about sharing experience as well as combining it with the right balance of doctrine, of best practice and guidance. So what this course will seek to do will be to deliver that shared reflective practice, that thinking, sharing people's experiences from different agencies with other people, about combining that and bringing that within an integrated emergency management world. And so the ideal for us is that we want people, when they leave the course at the end of 3 days, to have a good understanding of what they need to do within their organisation to try and influence change around community resilience and emergency management procedures within their own organisation. So that's the what and the how.
So if people want to follow up this conversation and find out more about this new course, presumably they go to the college website, what should they look for? What's the course called?
It's going to be multi-agency leadership and interoperability. It's going to be totally multi-agency, so not just the police, fire and ambulance, and we're looking for to involve from the private sector, so people involved in the security industry, major sporting and event venues, retail outlets, that sort of thing. People who involved in emergency management procedures in an emergency scenario. So get an understanding of the procedures through the doctrine and then the guidance, but also how we work together, you understanding the joint decision model, understanding the various other toolkits that they can use to develop interoperability.
And we expect this course to start running from?
In the autumn.
In the autumn.
And one of the key elements we want people to, is to, when they leave the college, is to have an understanding in their own minds of some of the areas that they'd like to work on to influence the change in relation to the delivery of emergency management procedures within or on behalf of their organisation.
Thank you very much.